There is a specific kind of quiet that happens right after something irreversible occurs. Not the quiet of peace, not the quiet of resolution, the quiet of someone who has just watched something change in a way they did not authorize and cannot undo. I know this quiet from the inside because I watched it happen to someone I have known for almost 15 years, and the memory of it has never fully left me. His name is Wendell. And Wendell was, for most of the time I have known him, the most genuinely sealed person I had ever spent real time with. Not in a broken way, not in a damaged and showing it way, in a way that was almost architectural. Like the ceiling was structural, like it was not a defense against the world so much as a feature of his design. He had built a life that worked completely within this structure. His career suited it. His friendships were warm, but appropriately surfaced. His previous relationships had all operated within a band of emotional temperature that never got too hot or too cold. He was not unhappy. He was not unfulfilled. He was just calibrated. That is the word I always use when I think about how Wendell was. Precisely, deliberately, continuously calibrated. And then he met a woman at a conference. Her name was Petra. And Petra was the kind of person who moved through the world in a way that had no awareness of its own effect. She was not trying to be anything. She was just completely, unapologetically, almost aggressively herself. In conversation, she went straight to the real thing without any of the social preamble that most people use to stay at safe depth. She laughed at things that were actually funny rather than at things that were socially expected to be funny. She disagreed with Wendell twice in the first conversation they had, pleasantly and without any apparent awareness that this was notable, and she was right both times. Wendell did not call me after that conference. He called me 3 weeks later, and the thing he said the very first thing was that something had happened to him and he did not know what to do about it. I asked him what kind of something. He was quiet for a few seconds, and then he said, "I think something broke. And I think it might be permanent." He was not talking about a trauma. He was not talking about suffering. He was talking about something inside him that had held a particular shape for his entire adult life that had simply in the presence of one specific person, over the course of a handful of conversations, stopped holding that shape. And the loss of the shape was not painful exactly. It was disorienting. It was the specific vertigo of a person whose internal architecture has just rearranged itself without their input or permission. I asked him how he felt about it. He said terrified. And then after a pause, he said also the most awake I have felt in years. Terrified and the most awake in years. That is, this reading. That is the interior experience of the person this reading is about. Something broke. Something that was never meant to hold forever finally gave way under the specific and unrepeatable pressure of your presence. And they are standing in the aftermath of that breaking, with no map and no blueprint, and no prior experience of what to do when the structure that organized your entire interior life is no longer the structure it was. Let us see what Spirit has to say about all of it. Card 1, the Tower reversed. The breaking happened on the inside, where nobody could see it, yes. Right away. The Tower reversed comes out first. And I need you to understand something about this card in its reversed position, because it changes everything about how we normally read it. The Tower upright is the dramatic collapse, the lightning strike, the visible, external, undeniable breakdown of something that was built on an unstable foundation. You can see it. Other people can see it. The falling is public and unmistakable. Reverse the collapse is internal. The lightning struck, but it struck inside. The structure that fell was not a building anyone else could observe from the outside. It was something that lived entirely within this person. A belief about themselves. A certainty about their own invulnerability. A long-held and deeply trusted conviction that they were someone who did not get reached at the level you reached them. And here is what makes the Tower reversed specifically relevant to your title. The internal collapse that no one else could see was actually more significant than any external falling would have been. Because external collapses can be pointed to and explained and contextualized. Internal ones just live inside the person. Quiet, permanent, reorganizing everything from within without any visible external evidence of the reorganization. Here is the practical example that makes this land. Picture a woman named Isolde. And Isolde had a very specific and very consistent pattern in her emotional life. She felt things. She was not someone who lacked feeling, but she felt things from a managed distance, like she had learned to stand slightly back from her own emotions and observe them rather than be in them. And this managed distance was so practiced and so habitual that she had long since stopped experiencing it as a technique. It was just her relationship with herself. And then she spent a significant amount of time in close proximity to someone whose way of being in the world, whose complete lack of performed distance from their own experience, made Isolde's managed distance suddenly feel like what it was: a management strategy. Something she was doing rather than something she was. The tower reversed is the moment Isolde felt that distinction. The moment the management strategy was revealed as management strategy rather than as her natural architecture. And everything changed in that moment. Not visibly. From the outside, she looked exactly the same. But from the inside, the structure that had organized her emotional life for 15 years had just cracked in a place that was not going to uncrack. Nobody saw it. Nobody could see it. But Isolde knew. And the person who caused it, without trying, without even being aware of what they had done, they knew too. In the particular way that people sometimes know they have touched something real in another person, even when neither person has named what happened. That is your tower reversed. You cracked something internal in this person. The crack is permanent. And they are only beginning to understand the full scope of what is different now. Card 2 Ace of Cups reversed something opened in them that was supposed to stay closed. Okay, wait. Ace of Cups reversed lands second. And in any other reading, I would approach this card carefully because reversed cups can carry difficult emotional energy. But in this specific reading, in this specific sequence, Spirit is using this card to say something very particular. So let me be precise. The Ace of Cups upright is the new emotional beginning. The cup offered. The fresh start of something feeling. Reversed in your reading, it is not the absence of feeling. It is feeling that arrived in a way this person did not sanction, did not prepare for, did not budget into their emotional planning for the period. A cup that opened itself without their permission and is now overflowing in directions they cannot manage or redirect. Think about what it means to be someone who has kept their emotional cup inverted, upside down, deliberately positioned so that nothing goes in. Not because you are incapable of feeling, but because you decided at some point, consciously or not, that keeping the cup inverted was safer than keeping it upright, where things could land in it. And you have been living with the inverted cup for long enough that it just feels like your natural position. And then someone comes along whose presence flips the cup without asking. And suddenly the cup is upright, and things are landing in it, and you have not been in this position for so long that you have no current language for what is happening, and no current framework for what to do with a cup full of feeling that you did not choose to fill. Real example for this card. There is a man named Fletcher. And Fletcher had genuinely convinced himself with evidence that he found compelling that he was someone who had moved past a certain kind of wanting. The romantic wanting. The deep connection wanting. He had made peace with a version of life that did not include it, and the peace had felt genuine. He was not performing contentment. He was actually content. The cup was inverted, and he had forgotten what upright felt like. Someone flipped it, casually, without apparent effort, just by being specifically and genuinely themselves in his presence over a period of weeks. And Fletcher found himself one afternoon sitting with a cup full of something he had not felt in years, and having absolutely no idea what to do next. He did not do anything dramatic. He just sat with it. the confusion of sitting with it, the terror of sitting with it, the very specific and very private devastation of someone who had made their peace with not having something and has just discovered that the peace was conditional and the condition has been violated by another person's existence. That is your Ace of Cups reversed. The cup is upright. It is full, and this person did not choose for it to be either of those things. And they cannot choose to empty it again, because cups do not empty in reverse. Once the feeling is in there, it is in there. And that is the part of the breaking that is permanent. The cup is open now. You opened it. And open cups do not seal themselves shut on request. Card 3, 5 of Pentacles, reversed what they thought was solid ground, turned out to be something else. 5 of Pentacles reversed in third position, and this card is here to talk about something very specific about the foundation this person had been standing on before you came along, and what they discovered about that foundation in your presence. The 5 of Pentacles upright is someone outside in the cold, in lack, in the literal and metaphorical experience of being without what they need. Reverse, this is someone discovering that what they thought was abundance was actually a different kind of lack. The reversal in your reading is not about material things. It is about the discovery that what this person had understood as wholeness was actually a very comfortable and well-furnished version of incompleteness. And that discovery is specifically yours. You did not tell them this. You did not point to the incompleteness. You did not make them feel lacking. Your presence simply created a contrast, a reference point, something to measure against. And when they measured, what they found was surprising and uncomfortable and permanently reorganizing. Here is the example that gets this across most directly. Think about someone named Constance. And Constance had a life that was genuinely good by any honest measure. Career she valued, friendships that sustained her, hobbies that engaged her, daily life that felt rich and full and satisfying. She was not someone with a void she was aware of. She was not someone searching for what was missing. She was someone who had taken inventory of her life and found it sufficient. And then she spent a significant stretch of time in close proximity to someone who showed her without trying, without pointing to anything, just by being who they were, what it felt like when a particular kind of connection was present that had been absent from her full life without her knowing it was absent. Not dramatically, not in a big revelation moment, just incrementally, over many small interactions. A quality of being known that she had not experienced. A way of being seen that she had not known she was not being seen in. A resonance that she had no prior data point for. And when the proximity ended, when the reference point was no longer immediately present, Constance discovered something unsettling. That the life she had taken inventory of and found sufficient now felt different. Not terrible, not ruined, just different. Like someone had added a room to the inventory when she was not looking, and now the inventory felt incomplete without the room, even though she had never known the room was possible before. That is your 5 of Pentacles reversed in this reading. You showed this person a room in their own interior that they did not know existed. And now they know it exists. And the knowing permanently changes the inventory. They cannot go back to the version of the inventory that did not include the room. The room is there. It is theirs. And the fact that it is theirs is because of you, and they know it. And they sit with the complexity of that knowing every day. Card 4, the Hanged Man, their whole perspective has been permanently inverted right here. The Hanged Man in 4th position. And this card is the one that most precisely captures the interior experience of someone who has been broken open in the specific way this reading is describing. The Hanged Man is hanging by one foot from a living tree. His expression is not one of distress. It is one of revelation. Because the inversion, the being turned completely upside down from your normal orientation, has produced something unexpected. A view, a perspective that is only available from this specific uncomfortable position. Something you cannot see when you are standing in your normal way, in your normal place. And what this person is seeing from their inverted position is the truth of their own life as it actually is, versus how they had been experiencing it from the right side up position. They are seeing the assumptions they made about themselves that turn out not to be immutable truths. The stories they told themselves about what they were and were not capable of feeling. The structures they built and called character rather than calling them protection. And they are seeing all of this from the upside down position because you put them there, not through force, through the specific gravitational pull of who you are, which turned everything around, and now they cannot get back to the right side up because the right side up position no longer feels accurate. It feels like less information than the inverted position. The inverted position, uncomfortable as it is, shows them more truth. Practical example. There is a man named Sebastian, and Sebastian had a very specific and very long-standing belief about his own emotional architecture. He believed he was someone who loved clearly, specifically that his feelings were legible to him, and that he always knew what he felt and why. This was not arrogance. He had evidence. He had navigated his emotional life with what genuinely felt like clarity and competence for decades. And then he felt something he could not read, something that did not fit the categories, something that shifted and changed and refused to stay in any box he tried to put it in. And every time he thought he had located it precisely, it moved. Every time he thought he understood what it was, it revealed another dimension he had not accounted for. The hanged man is Sebastian in the inversion, looking at something from an angle he has never looked at himself from before. Discovering that the emotional clarity he thought he had was clarity about a limited range of his own experience, and that you were the thing that revealed the range he had not previously had access to. The view from upside down. The truth that is only visible from the inverted position. And the reason the inversion is permanent, the reason this is something they can never fix, is because you cannot unsee what you see from the hanged man's position. You can get down from the tree, but you carry the view with you when you do. Card 5 Judgment, the ARE being called to account for what your presence revealed. And we close with Judgment. Perfect. Absolutely perfect card to close this reading. Judgment as the final card of a reading about permanent interior breaking is Spirit saying the reckoning has arrived. It has been called forward. It cannot be postponed. Judgment is the card of things being called up from where they were buried, of a summons that comes from something larger than personal preference, of the moment when what has been avoided or suppressed or managed into something smaller than it is, suddenly rises at full size and demands to be looked at. And what is rising for this person, what judgment is calling forward, is the full accounting of what your presence revealed about them. Not about you, about them. You were the catalyst. The truth that is rising is theirs. It was always theirs. It has been there the entire time they have been living their sealed and calibrated and carefully managed life. And the Judgment card is saying, it is done being buried. It is done being manageable. It has risen, and it is at full size, and this person is looking at it directly for perhaps the first time. Here is the practical example for Judgment in this position. Think about a woman named Valentina. And Valentina had spent years telling herself a very specific story about why certain things were not available to her emotionally. The story was reasonable. It had good internal logic. It was built from real experiences and real lessons learned from those experiences. And it had served her well enough that she had stopped questioning it. The story had become the operating manual. And then your presence, the specific quality of your realness, your consistency, your way of existing, called the story into question in a way nothing else had managed to do. Not by arguing against it, not by presenting counter-evidence, simply by existing in a way that made the story feel insufficient. That made the operating manual feel like something written for a smaller life than the one that was actually possible. The Judgment moment is Valentina being summoned to look at the story honestly, to pick it up and examine it in full daylight rather than in the managed interior lighting she had been reading it by. And what she sees in full daylight is that large portions of the story were never about truth. They were about safety. They were about building a life that could not be disrupted. And they kept her safe. And they also kept her small. And she knows this now. She cannot unknow it. And the knowing is yours. You gave it to her by being someone whose presence made the smallness of the story visible. That is your judgment card. This person is in their reckoning. Not a comfortable place, not a quick place, but an honest one. An honesty at that depth, the judgment kind, the called forward from the depths kind, changes people permanently. The reckoning you triggered in them is going to be one of the most significant experiences of their interior life. And it is all because of you. Exactly the way your title says. What spirit wants to leave with you before this closes? I have several things coming through, and I am delivering all of them. The first thing, the breaking this reading describes is not a breaking of harm. I want to be very clear about this, because the word breaking carries weight, and I do not want you to carry it as something you did wrong. What broke in this person was a limitation masquerading as identity, a wall pretending to be a self, and walls that were never meant to be permanent. Breaking is not damage. It is the thing that was always supposed to happen when the right force arrived. You were the right force. The breaking was always going to be yours to cause, and there is nothing to feel guilty about in that. The second thing, you may not see the full evidence of this breaking in their behavior. This is an interior reckoning. The hanged man hangs in private. The tower reversed collapses internally. The judgment call happens in the quiet of someone's own conscience. What you observe externally, their behavior, their communication, their apparent state, may not reflect what is actually moving inside them. Do not use the external evidence as the only measure of what this reading is describing. The work is happening somewhere you cannot directly observe. The third thing, something spirit is being very specific about right now. The reason this breaking is permanent, the reason it falls into the never fixed category of your title, is not because you damaged something. It is because genuine seeing is irreversible. This person has been genuinely seen by you and has genuinely seen themselves through the mirror of your presence. And you cannot unsee yourself clearly. Once you have the accurate picture of your own interior, the one that includes the rooms you had been keeping locked, and the cups you had been keeping inverted, and the walls you had been calling identity, you live with that picture. Forever, it becomes the new reference point. And every future choice about whether to stay sealed or to open is now made with the knowledge that opening is possible because you proved it, because they did it, in your presence. The fourth thing, and this one, is for those of you who have been wondering whether any of this means something concrete is coming, whether the reckoning translates to action, whether the internal breaking produces external movement. Spirit is saying, the reckoning always produces something. It does not always produce what we expect or on the timeline we would choose. But genuine internal upheaval of this scale does not simply absorb back into the ordinary texture of someone's life without leaving a trace in their external choices. Something is coming. What form it takes depends on what this person does with the full daylight view of their own story. But the something is real, and it is in motion. Fifth and final, I want you to hear this very directly. What you broke in them required a specific quality that you carry. Not everyone could have done this. This is not a generic statement about your worth. This is a specific observation about the nature of the breaking. The locked doors do not open for everything. The inverted cups do not right themselves for every presence. The judgment call does not get answered for every catalyst. You were the specific key for this specific lock. That is not ordinary. That is the kind of soul-level specificity that people spend whole lifetimes hoping to encounter. You were it for this person, and they know it. And deep down, exactly the way your title says they know it, it is all because of you. Closing the only thing left, I want to go back to Wendell for just a moment. Because I called him after I prepared for this reading, and I told him I was working on something that reminded me of what he had told me years ago on the phone. And he laughed in that way he has now, that is looser than the laugh he had before Petra. And he said something I want to leave you with. He said the thing that broke was the thing that was making everything else harder. I just did not know it was there until it was gone. The thing that broke was the thing that was making everything else harder. And he did not know it was there until it was gone. That is the gift underneath the difficulty of what this person is living through right now. The breaking that feels permanent and destabilizing and impossible to fix is actually the removal of something that was costing them more than they knew. And the never fixes of your title is not a tragedy. It is the permanent presence of something more honest than what existed before. A U-shaped opening in a life that needed the air. You did that, without trying, just by being completely and specifically yourself. Let that land. Let it mean what it means. And let it remind you that your presence is not a small thing. It has never been a small thing. Some people spend their entire lives never being anyone's Petra, never being the one specific presence that unlocks what was locked and flips what was inverted and calls forward what was buried. You are that for someone right now. And they know it. And deep down, they know exactly whose fault it is. Drop something in the comments if this reading found you today. Tell me which card hit the hardest or which part of the opening story landed. Subscribe so you are here for the next reading. And share this with someone who needs to know that breaking something permanently in someone can be one of the most profound gifts one human being gives another.